Let's get started with today's podcast. So, Ryan, I want to know about your journey. You started your career as a consultant, from where you work for PE Ventures, then you have an entrepreneur journey, and now you are sitting at the intersection of education and technology. So, what inspired this journey?
I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I think from the time I'm a first generation entrepreneur, but from the time I was very, very young, I kind of knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I didn't quite have the words for it. And so, while it's a bit of a non-linear journey, I think it was always heading towards something entrepreneurial. And then I just kept doing what I liked, and I kept doubling down on what worked. And some things didn't work along the way. And that's really how I got here. And I think today I'm quite fortunate to be at a space where I think is really where the future of the world is, which is essentially AI and Agentic AI, and how is that going to fundamentally reshape the world for the better, hopefully. And I'm very happy that we have a chance and an opportunity and a privilege to play a small part in that. So really, it was not very complicated. I just kind of followed what I wanted to do and kept doubling down on what worked.
So now moving on to the second question. So even I have been associated with Interview Kickstart for the last 3 years, and I have seen this journey, but I want you to elaborate it for our listeners. Interview Kickstart started as an interview preparation organization, and we have completely pivoted to an AI first platform.
Right.
So what transpired this journey, how you navigated it, and how you are inspiring everyone in Interview Kickstart to become an AI first organization?
That's actually a great question. I think the one important learning for me is that you can't really plan things beyond a point of time. You have to see where the world is moving, and then you have to quickly adapt. So when we started, I think while we started with interview prep and then we went to up-leveling, and then effectively now we've gone on to AI, I think it's much more interesting to see what has not changed and what gave us the right to do this. And I think what has not changed is we had a very deep insight very early on in the business. And that insight was that companies are the new universities, right? So what do I mean by that? We realized that especially in cutting edge tech, the best thinking was not really coming out of universities. It was coming out of top companies, because companies like Google, Meta, at that time was Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Apple, Uber, LinkedIn, Airbnb, the kind of places where we have our instructors from, OpenAI, Anthropic. These companies are really reinventing tech for massive scale. And so that was our deep insight. Our deep insight was that companies are going to be the new universities. And so our primary offering, while it was, externally it might have been seen as interview prep and then various domains, which we call up-leveling, and then AI. Actually, our core offering has always been learn from the world's best practitioners, right? And that was the core moat that we built. Now, as the market moved, we realized that the market needed to learn different things from the world's best practitioners, right? So what changed was that we started with interview prep, and that's what the world needed to learn. Then the world needed to learn about various domains like cloud, cybersecurity, etc. And then the world, like now, needs to learn about AI and ML. And within AI and ML also it has moved. It was deep ML, the modern ML, generative AI, now agentic AI. So I think the what we offer publicly has consistently evolved, but the core offering has remained the same, which is learn in a very hands-on manner the best in technology from the world's best practitioners, right? Which is why we think that companies are the new universities. So that's been the journey and how we've gone about doing this. In terms of the second part of your question, which is really AI and how do we inspire everybody to come on board the AI bandwagon, I think the writing's on the wall. If you don't, AI is probably the most exciting thing that most of us have seen in our career. It's also the most threatening thing that most of us have seen in our career. And so both to survive and to thrive, you need to kind of adopt AI. And that's what we are trying to do within our org and for our learners, for our customers, for our partners. So it's quite easy because I think most people are aware. We just have to give them the via media, the tools, the mechanisms of of how to get started and how to build really good agentic AI capabilities to accelerate their paths. And that's what we are trying to do.
Okay. I want you to elaborate on one topic. You touched upon learning from AI practitioners time and again. I want you to elaborate on that part, why learning from practitioners is the new way to learn rather than learning from the traditional method of going to universities.
Yes. So I think that's a great question. Just as AI is changing the world, the way we learn has also completely changed or should completely change. And it's really moving from professors to practitioners, from learning to building, and from passive to active, right? What do I mean? Historically, we learned by going to universities, we learned from professors, we ended up getting certificates, right? That was the end game. But AI is moving so fast, right? And it is changing things at warp speed that really one needs to build. And if you look at how a university operates, they operate in a semester system. So at best, people are changing their curriculum once every 6 months. But we know that most professors don't change their curriculum for years because they're not incentivized to do so once they have tenure, right? AI is changing every week. And so you need a very different model of learning, which is why we think you should learn from practitioners. But since our audience is a tech audience that very often appreciates data, let's put this in data. The richest university in the world, very popular today for obvious reasons, is Harvard, right? Harvard has an endowment, Utkarsh, of $52.3 billion. That is more than the GDP of many countries. But that is their entire endowment. Meta, Google, and most of the other top companies have all committed to invest between 60 to 70 billion dollars, more than the entire endowment of Harvard, in 1 year, right?
Wow.
And that is really why cutting edge AI is coming from these top companies. I affectionately have this framework which is called the 4D framework. I think you need 4 Ds to thrive in an AI world: distribution, data, data centers, and most importantly, dough or cash, right? And all of these are with the largest companies, right? Which is why cutting edge AI is happening at these companies. And you can see that, right? If you look at the cutting edge models of today, the GPT-5 was just launched, which has come out of OpenAI. There's Gemini, which is coming out of Google, right? There is Llama, to some extent, may not be as cutting edge as it was, but still very good, coming out of Meta. You have Claude coming out of Anthropic. You don't really have any top LLMs coming out of university, right? And that just shows how the world has completely moved towards top companies. And we believe you should learn from people who are at the bleeding edge, especially in a fast moving technology like AI, which is why I keep talking about practitioners.
Very well. So let me talk about Indian context here. Right now, India does not have a foundation model on its own. We have started trying, but it will take some time for us to reach there. At the same time, we are behind in the race, and that has been accepted by all of us. Now, in India, tech professionals are trying to upskill,
Right.
but at the same time, they are confused what to learn, where to start, how to approach this whole problem.
Yeah.
So if any advice you want to give to the tech professionals, how will you ask them to proceed on up-leveling themselves?
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's not an easy question. And I talk to a lot of people, both on the business side and on the consumer side. And I realize that this is a concern for people, and they really struggle. So I have come up with a framework that I use, right, to help people understand how to think about AI, right? When you say things like I want to learn AI, it is like saying I want to learn sports, right? But there are many different sports, right? So which one, at what level, how? I use the example of sports because I like sports. But let's break down AI, right? There are really 6 different elements of AI which one can look at gaining proficiency of, and based on what element you gain proficiency of, you can get more advanced on the AI side. It starts with LLMs, just understanding how to use GPT, Gemini, Llama, Claude, maybe DeepSeek, right? Quen, all of these, right from basic use cases to advanced use cases, right? As an engineer, for example, you could use an LLM to write cutting edge code, right? You could use it to debug your code, right? So LLMs themselves and getting very proficient with LLMs is very powerful. Then you have what we call co-pilots, right? Which is the tools coming out of Microsoft or Google, because most companies either a Microsoft shop or a Google shop. And on the tech side, a co-pilot is like GitHub Copilot, right? Leveraging that, getting comfortable with that. These two, I would categorize as productivity enhancers, right? They will help you become a 10x engineer or 100x engineer, depending on how well you use it. And those are good places to start. But if you want to get more advanced, right, then you start moving into what I call the transformational capabilities, right? On the transformation capabilities, you have 4 best-in-class tools: agentic AI, modern ML, and deep ML, right? So on the tool side, as an engineer, a good example of tools is learning how to use and leverage Cursor, right? Mm-hmm. Or a windsurf, right? And there are many such tools that you can learn to leverage, and that can completely transform the way you code. And then you can start building agents. Now, agents can be built in a pro-code way, in a low-code way, or maybe not so much for engineers, in a no-code way as well, right? Agents are fundamentally transformative. It's like a special case of generative AI. And if you want to go beyond, you can go into really advanced machine learning, right? And there is modern machine learning, which is essentially building on top of the existing models, starting from fine-tuning and moving upwards. And then there is what we call deep ML, which is really starting from the base, building up the models themselves and going all the way to fine-tuning and deployment. So that's really the continuum of how you think about AI in your career. You can start from LLMs and stop anywhere, right? Based on what you want. Obviously, the further you go, the more the ROI, but the longer the time you take, right? So that's really how I would break it down, because it's an actionable way to think about how to progress through the various horizons in AI. And that is as of today, right? Which is, let's say, August 2025. But with AI moving so fast, this could change a bit. But I think this is a good framework to keep in mind, to think about how you pull the levers to get productive or transformative through leveraging AI.
Yeah. So let's move to the next question. I want to touch upon agentic AI.
Okay.
And as you have worked as a consultant in the past, you have seen various industries, right? You have worked closely on problems related to one industry to another. Now, I want you to elaborate on how do you think agentic AI is going to disrupt across industries and functions?
Yeah, I think if there is one thing I would ask anybody and everybody to really get proficient at, it's agentic AI. Because agentic AI is where all the money is going to be made. In AI, it's made, it's in the software form, it's agentic AI. In physical AI, it's probably robots and, things like that. But for today's discussion, let's talk about the software aspects. What does the word agentic AI mean? It's basically AI that has agency, right? And the word agentic is a derivative of agency. And essentially what agentic AI is it can do tasks end to end. Now you could define what the end is. If you want to buy a flight ticket, your agentic AI could be helping you search for various flights with the miles that you have based on certain airline alliances, and it could stop there, or potentially it could go all the way to actually make a booking, right? So think about agentic AI as a really advanced version of automation, right? Which has the agency to act. And when you think about it this way, it can transform pretty much every function across every role in every industry, right? So let's look at a couple of examples, that where you can use agents very seamlessly. Let's start with recruiting, right? All of us would have been recruited by some company at some point of time, or hoping to get recruited by, our dream companies in the future. Today, recruiting is a very manual process, right? The way recruiting works is somebody goes, puts up a post, creates the JDs for that post, puts it up on LinkedIn, a bunch of people apply, you download all their resumes or their LinkedIn profiles, and then either through your ATS or you manually figure out which makes sense for you to interview. Then you schedule interviews, then you go back and forth, then you actually do the interview, and then you get feedback, right? And then you get to a yay or nay, yes or no answer. This entire piece can be done by one or a combination of agents, right? You could have an agent that creates the post, puts it up on LinkedIn, collects the resumes that come, automatically runs it through an LLM, analyzes what makes sense, who should you interview, and it could stop there, or it could go further and actually reach out to people, send emails, schedule interviews. You could potentially have another agent that is an agent interviewer, then you could have a feedback agent and orchestrate all of that together to come to an answer, right? So agents are super powerful. You can have single agents or multiple agents, and you can have an orchestration layer which orchestrates all of those layers, these agents. Right? As an example, a couple of days ago, there was a very interesting post on LinkedIn where this researcher posted a LinkedIn post where he said, here are a list of 100 agents. And if any founder wants to build $1 billion company, you can build $1 billion company with just a single founder and these 100 agents, right? So that is the power of agents. And I gave an example of recruiting. You could give an example of procurement. Today, invoice matching vis-a-vis contract is such a tedious manual process. You could have an agent that whenever somebody sends an invoice, it automatically picks up the invoice, matches the invoice with the terms in a contract, and that could be, let's say, an invoicing matching agent, right? Similarly, you could have something on in legal, right? You could have something on finance. You could have a sales agent, right? Where the lead gets dropped, and based on the components of the lead, the sales agent could reach out, set up, do a dummy call, and even talk potentially to the customer. So I think agentic AI is going to completely transform every single function and every single role that is out there, which is why you want to be on the right side of this, right? You want to be able to ride this wave. You don't want to get washed away by this tsunami. It's much more than a wave.
Talking about the wave, how do you see the next 3 or 5 years will be for tech professionals? And if they want to be on the right side of the wave, how should they approach up-leveling?
I can give you a best guess. I don't think anybody knows. And frankly, if I knew where and who's going to do well, I would be betting all my money there, right? Okay. But we do have directionally an understanding of where the world is going. There are really two schools of thought. There is one school of thought that says, as more AI comes in, there is going to be more automation, and therefore there is going to be less jobs, right? I think I'm not of that view. And increasingly, if you listen to the smartest people in tech, none of them are of this view, right? And that is because of something called the Jevons paradox.
Okay.
The Jevons paradox essentially says, as something becomes cheaper, the demand for it increases and it creates many, many new jobs. Okay? And you see, that is what is happening in tech. Companies are investing, they're betting their entire balance sheets on AI. Generative AI, agentic AI, deep learning, all of these are creating and unlocking huge number of new use cases, right? Which tech can go into. In fact, I might be more worried if I'm not an engineer, because engineering capabilities are now going into many newer functions, right? You look at Harvey, which is a legal LLM. I think it recently was valued at $5 billion. It completely disrupted paralegals. But it requires a set of engineers to run and train Harvey. True, right? And so my sense is we are going to see many more use cases that we can't imagine today, right? And that is really where the world is going to go. As an interesting example, at the end of last century and the turn of the century, I might have got the timing a bit wrong, but directionally it's around there. One of the most common jobs was something called a street lamp lighter. Now, this job doesn't exist today, right? It is essentially people who would go and light candles on every street lamp so that the roads were not dark at night, right? And then electricity came. And everybody thought that electricity is going to lead to mass scale unemployment because all of these street lamp lighters would not need to light lamps, which is true. But electricity unlocked the entire modern industrial era, right? And so it created far more jobs than it removed. It's just that we couldn't tell what those jobs were, right? Yes, they weren't street lamp lighters, right? They were software engineers, and they were mechanics, and they were telecom engineers, and they were, a whole bunch of different sets of people. And I suspect that is what's going to happen with AI, because there is no limit to human desire and ingenuity. And these tech companies are really going to expand into every single area. So I think software continues to be a really, really good area to kind of double down on.
Interesting. So now I'll move to the next question, and this one is very interesting, and
Okay.
I want you to use your personal experience to answer this question, because a lot of tech professionals who come to us, they say, I want to learn AI within 1 month. Can you give me something so that I can learn AI within 1 month? Can you give me a shorter course? And given you have gone through the motions of learning through doing over the course of years, and this includes learning AI also over the course of these 3 years, what advice you will give to these people?
Well, if you want to learn something in less than 1 month, then we are clearly not the right platform for you, right? Now, it's not that let's step back. It's not that you can't learn AI in 1 month, right? But you can't learn deep AI in 1 month, right? You can definitely learn how to do some prompt engineering, how to work with, LLMs. You can probably go and spend some time on GitHub Copilot and figure out how to learn to leverage GitHub Copilot. Those can be done in weeks, right? And those are not even things that we teach, right? Frankly, those can be learned for free, right? The person who's coming to us is somebody who wants to really accelerate their careers leveraging AI, right? I don't think we don't even offer courses. Actually, what we offer is accelerators, right? It's to help you accelerate your career very, very significantly. And that obviously has very, very tangible monetary benefits as well, right? The ROI, or in this case, the ROE, the return on education is surreal. And that requires time, right? It requires time because you need to learn the fundamentals of AI. You need to learn potentially really how to build agents, how to build advanced agents. And if you are, let's say, taking one of our ML courses, then you need to learn how to do things like fine tuning. So honestly, if you want to learn and get good in AI in 1 month, you can, right? There is a great platform that I can recommend where you can do this for free. It's called YouTube, right? It's something all of us know. In fact, YouTube uses a lot of AI. But if you want to learn transformative AI that can really accelerate your career and lead to a transformative outcome, then it takes time. Let me throw in a light joke here. I have a friend whose dad told me something very interesting once when it came to learning. He said, the problem with your generation is they want to learn everything super fast, right? And he said, have you ever had microwave biryani? And I said, yeah. He said, how does it taste? I said, it tastes horrible, right? He said, yes. You don't cook biryani in a microwave. You cook biryani slowly. You cook it on a slow gas, ideally on top of a tawa, right? You cook it very, very slowly. You let it simmer. You let the juices come out, and that's when it's very tasty, right? That's how you should think about transformative AI. Not like a biryani, but it takes time, right? And so if you want microwave super fast learning, YouTube is there for free, right? But if you want really tasty AI, right? And you want AI that's going to really help you have a transformative experience, right? And you want to relish the learning, much like you would biryani, then it needs to take time, right? And it's not that much time. I think, a couple of months, maybe a quarter or so is great. And if you look at the grand scheme of your career, we all work for 30 years. 30 into 4 is 120 quarters. If you were to spend a quarter learning something that can transform the rest of the 120 quarters, that's less than 1% of the time. Like, why would you not do that? Because the upside is quantifiably different, right? And so bottom line is eat slow cooked biryani and take time to learn AI.
Very well. So let's talk about how to eat really slow cooked biryani here. And we have discussed this internally a lot. Learning by building. Can you explain that concept to us? What is learning by building?
That's actually one of my favorite changes that's come about. Historically, learning was passive, right? You sat in a class, you listen to an expert talk, and you went home like a guru-shishya relationship, and you did some homework and you came back, right? That worked when the pace of change was very slow. Because things were not moving fast, you could take time to learn and iterate, right? Now things are moving at warp speed, right? And AI cannot be learned intellectually. You can't listen to somebody and not get your hands dirty, right? So we believe that the best way to learn is by actually doing, okay? And that we believe is natural to humans. So if you look at children, how do children learn? We all as children, right? We learned by doing. We never said, I'm going to intellectually teach you how to walk.
Yeah.
And then one day you start walking. That doesn't happen. Or I'm going to intellectually teach you how to ride a bicycle. Doesn't work, right? You learn to walk by doing. Actually, walking is an exercise in falling. Every time you take a step forward, you're falling, you put your step down, right? Cycling, again by doing, right? So if things as basic as walking and cycling need to be learned by doing, how can you imagine that something as transformative as AI will be learned without doing, right? So it is just the natural way we learn. And that is the way we believe one should learn. And the way we believe one should learn is by getting your hands dirty, actually building. Because when you build, you understand the challenges, the difficulties, how do you optimize, where do you kind of hit the roadblocks? And that is our own belief. We believe deeply that learning by doing in a hands-on manner, a project-led manner, is really the only way to learn AI, right? And it kind of all goes together. So practitioners teaching you with use cases that make sense for you and you build them, then you come out very powerful if you have all of those three together.
Okay, so this is the recipe of really tasty biryani. Practitioners teaching you use cases which are real world, and then you do it on your own, do it hands-on, get your hands dirty, and that's how you learn AI.
And you get mentored by the practitioners once you have built, right? So you're kind of co-building, right? So the way to think about this is that you are actually hiring the world's best practitioners to teach you. That is what you are doing here. You're not coming to do a course, you're coming to accelerate your career. And the way you're doing that is by you are hiring the best of the best folks from Google, from OpenAI. It's almost as if you're calling them and you've lined up 100 of them and they are coming to mentor you to transform your career. I think that's a great construct, right? But that is exactly what you are doing.
So let's focus more on mentoring. So at IK, we have 700 plus mentors who are practitioners. So can you just walk us through the advantage of mentoring when it comes to learning AI specifically?
You want to learn from people who have the lived experience, right? Because they know what are the challenges to deal with. They know how to think about this at scale, and they can tell you what is coming your way, right? And that is why we believe you should learn from these top practitioners, right? So let me break this down. I would say there are three key reasons. One is these people actually know what is cutting edge AI. They are the ones who are dealing with this every day, right? So the first thing is that these are people in the know, and they are the only people in the know, right? The second is they can bring their lived experience and help you see well beyond the bend, right? Of what's coming, what are the challenges, how do you navigate around it? And I think very underrated but super component about this is they are extremely inspiring, because you can see people who would have been like you at some point in time, who have made that transition and who've kind of gone on to become great AI engineers, and just understanding, working, living with them is deeply inspiring. And so I think being in the know, bringing their lived experience along with the inspiration that they build, that they bring, right, is what makes this really, really valuable.
Makes sense. And if you're not able to realize the importance of this, it's simply me talking to Ryan right now. In the last 15 or 20 minutes, I have learned a lot. I have picked up frameworks, I have picked up examples. So it's just sitting with the real mentor, right mentor, the learning cycle accelerates. Now I'll come to the last question. In India especially, we never had this concept of up-leveling. We thought education ends at university. Right? And when people have to spend again, they rethink a lot. They rethink in terms of the jobs, how much money I'm going to get, and so on. So if someone has to rationalize this thought of ROI spending on up-leveling themselves, then how should they think about it?
So let me give you a non-controversial and a controversial answer, right? Since
Sure.
it's the last question, you might as well make it fun. Let's start with the non-controversial answer. The non-controversial answer is that the world has changed. The university education was a construct of the industrial era, where you went and you learned a set of skills, and the world didn't change fast, right? And so you did not need to learn more, right? And that lasted for very, very, very long, because the pace of change was so slow that you didn't need to learn new skills. That era is done, right? We are entering an AI-enabled era now where things are moving not just fast, they're moving at warp speed. And so what the environment you graduated in, and the level of skills and where the world was when you graduated is very different from when the world was today. When I graduated, you had a Maruti ST and a Maruti 1000, right? And a Maruti 800, right? I mean, that kind of tells people how old I was. And today you have a Tesla with complete FSD, and I recently took a Waymo cab, which was driverless, right? We are talking about drone taxis, right? So in a world where nothing changed, you didn't need to do anything. But in a world where you now have driverless cabs and drone taxis, you need to rethink what you learned, right? And that is really why you need to keep reinventing yourself or reinvesting in yourself right now. And that's the best ROI or ROE that you can have. Now, let me give you the controversial answer. The controversial answer is there is an open school of thought out right now that says, should you even go to university? Right now, I don't want to give a comment on that. But the world has to keep up with the way things are going. And if you look at something like the Peter Thiel Fellowship, they encourage the best thinkers to not go to university and to go and learn practical skills, right? So the controversial answer is not should I think about spending again and learn today, and that being the question. I think the more interesting question is, why did I pay for going to university? That is the controversial answer. But essentially, either way, you must think about reinvesting in yourself, up-leveling, because the world is moving so fast and we are still in the early majority. And we have seen, as you would know, right, when we are at work, the employee surplus that you get, right, because of building these top skills, it's just transformation. You can be earning 2x your comp if you have the right skills and you're at the right company. So let's end on a positive note. So that's why I think you should do this.
So before we end, let's do a quick rapid fire.
Done.
So Ryan, first question. Would you hire someone who knows AI or someone with 20 years of experience?
I think none of those.
Okay.
Right? I think that I would hire people who have experience and who have built AI capabilities. Right? Those are the people where I think that. So I think that's a false choice. I think
The people that I would value today are people who have experience and who have built an understanding of how to turbocharge their experience with AI.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on to the second question. One person whom you follow to get all your AI updates.
No, I don't think there is one person you can follow to get all your AI updates. But I will tell you, Twitter is the best place to, if you want AI, AI Twitter is the best place to go. But my favorite is actually the All In podcast. I think the All In podcast is a great podcast, and they tend to cover a lot of AI stuff, more macro. I would say that is my favorite. I enjoy listening to it.
Okay. Now, what is your favorite AI tool which you are using day or night?
Tough. I would say it's probably between GPT, Gemini, one of the LLMs, or Granola, right? These are more recent, but really my favorite AI tool is Google.
Okay. Now, one fun question. If you are an AI tool, which AI tool you will be and why?
I'll definitely be an LLM because I talk a lot and the LLM is a large language model. So in line with my ability to talk a lot, I would say I would be an LLM for sure.
So last question, one AI prediction.
That's a good one. I think that we are underinvested in AI.
Okay.
As much as we are investing a lot of money, I think we don't quite appreciate just how significant the change is going to be. And the change may not be as significant in the next few years, but I think 5 to 10 years down the line, the change is going to be dramatic. I think for me, that moment the penny dropped when I sat in a Waymo car. It was surreal. And for me, the experience was I sat in a Waymo car, and then when I was in San Francisco, I actually chose Waymo over Uber, right? Because I thought the driverless car experience was amazing. So I think we are almost under investing in AI. I think the opportunity is much bigger than we can see today because we don't know what we don't know. Let's hope I'm right. It'll be great for our business.
Sure. So thanks, Ryan, for your time. It has been an insightful conversation. I really loved our biryani cooking part. So I learned something new. And hopefully we'll be able to continue this path and make sure we are able to provide the best AI up-leveling skill to everyone here in India as well as in the US.
Thank you very much, Utkarsh. I really enjoyed this. And on a lighter note, this time it is me actually physically here. Next time it could be the Ryan AI bot. So you never know.